Hello. In this final talk, I'm going to say a little bit about how we relate to those difficult stories about God, the ones we really find morally objectionable, like the story of Elijah slaughtering 400 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. The easiest approach is to treat them as myths. The story, like Elijah, might be based on something that actually happened, but perhaps we feel it has been so embroidered in the retelling that it can't be taken seriously. In other words, ignore it. It has no meaning for us. The problem with that is that it is actually part of Scripture, and Scripture, we believe, does have meaning for us. So what other ways can we look at it? Well, another approach is to focus on the message, which is quite clearly that Baal is not a real God. The only real God is Yahweh. Worship him and serve him. Obey him. Now here is a level of meaning that challenges us to think honestly about the idols, the false gods that we set up and follow in our own lives, the delusions that lead the world astray, and to ask God to free us from them. And I think there's another way which is a bit deeper still. We can let the whole of the story speak to us. We can place ourselves in the story and examine ourselves in the light of it. The story doesn't end at Mount Carmel, but continues on to Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. Elijah, far from rejoicing in his triumph and basking in celebrity as some do today, he flees the wrath of Queen Jezebel and he fears for his life. By the time he reaches Mount Horeb, his mood has changed, and he is able to hear the still small voice of God in his heart. And what does he hear God tell him? God tells him, in effect, that flushed with victory, on a spiritual high, as we might say, he's no use to God. But now humbled and close to God, listening to God's small voice, God is able to give him his divine commission. Now, when we look at the story in this way, we find a meaning at a deeper level than the literal. We might examine ourselves and say, have we, like Elijah, taken the opportunity to trounce our opponents? Or perhaps we just wish to do so. Do we feel that some people should be taken out? Those who perpetrate evil acts, who use violence, terror and war to impose their will. If we feel like this, we're in the same place as Elijah on Mount Carmel. And no matter how righteous our cause is, as indeed Elijah's cause was righteous, God says to us, "You're no use to me in that state. Turn from it and flee. Go to where I truly am and listen to me in your heart." And this, I think, is what the Bible is about. It is about listening to God. It's about attuning ourselves to its wavelength, taking seriously the different styles of writing that it has, the different levels of truth that it contains. It means taking inspiration from its story. It means trying to respond to God's call, a call which is addressed to each of us, just as it was addressed to Elijah and the other figures that we've come across. The Bible's not a textbook, it's not an instruction book, but it's a story whose meaning develops over time. And its different forms of writing and its different levels of truth mean that it's a book that has to be engaged with, not simply read. And engaging with its story can be disturbing and challenging, as I indeed have found it myself. But I've also found it empowering. As St. Paul said, we have to work out our own salvation in fear and trembling, confident that it is God who is at work in us. Well, I hope you have found this quiet day helpful. The Bible is a complex book, and its message developed over time, and we've looked at two ways in which that message developed when we've thought about the changing picture of God and the changing understanding of Jesus. And other ideas in the Bible develop in the same way. There's a development in the ideas about hope, judgment, salvation, and also in its moral teaching. Now, if this day has whetted your appetite and you'd like to go further, you might like to get a copy of my book, 6 Steps into the Bible. Information about it and how to obtain a copy you'll find on my website, and the address will be on the screen in a few moments. And you will also find on my website information about other retreats and courses that I'm leading. Well, thank you. Thank you for being with me today. God bless you as you step into the Bible.